So I was going to do a big monologue about what this video is going to be about. And yeah, I'm probably not going to do that. Instead, what I'm going to say is that this video is going to be about the state of the planet in 2019 because it's not good. It's not looking great. In fact, we've stuffed a lot of things in 1 year. It's all accumulated. So, yeah, without further ado, I think I'll just roll that intro and we'll just get started. Because I've got a list that I want to go through. It's not going to cover everything, but it's going to cover the most important things. Let's get to it. Okay, first of all, the forests are burning worldwide. There's been a bunch of burning forests. So yeah, I've got a list right in front of me. I'm gonna do my best to remember some of them, but yeah, I'm probably gonna be looking down at them. So excuse my unprofessionalism. Here we go. We have the Amazon Basin, the Sub-Saharan Africa, Queensland bushland, Indonesia and Malaysia, the Canary Islands in Spain, Alaska, Greenland, and Siberia. Yikes. In July alone, land and ocean global temperatures surpassed previous records. When forests burn, they release CO2 into the atmosphere. In July alone, 50 metric megatons of CO2 were released in the atmosphere, more than or worse than 2010 to 2018 combined. The Earth is drying up. In fact, it's estimated that 70,000 square kilometers of deserts are created annually. To put that into perspective, that would be the equivalent size of Ireland. The two main culprits to this dryness of the planet are one, overcrowded pastures, and two, global temperature spikes or human-induced climate change. Population growth has increased the need for food production, which means that a lot of the farmland are overpopulating pastures with animals because of the spike in human populations. What happens here is these pastures, or the animals in these pastures, then graze on a lot of the land, loosening the soil and eroding it, basically making it unusable for any type of crop. Human-induced climate change has increased temperatures and shifted precipitation patterns globally. In fact, we've been shifting the precipitation patterns of the world for centuries. One example of an area that's been slowly drying over time and affecting the species is the African elephant. What happens here is that the female matriarch typically has a inbuilt hereditary memory of where a water supply will be for her herd. What happens here is that the lake or the water supply that she knows off by heart dries up before they're able to get there, and they're not able to drink the water. Now, this isn't to say it happens all the time, don't get me wrong. Elephants have a unique way of digging through the soil to find water. They have a very, very keen sense of smell. But the fact of the matter is the lake that these animals remember growing up by, passed through hereditary means, is drying up faster than they are arriving. The oceans are warming. I'm not going to go into detail with this because I've explained it a number of times in previous videos, but ocean temperatures have increased by 1 degree Celsius faster than predicted measurements in only 140 years. This is because the ocean is a natural heat sink. In fact, it sucks up the heat from the atmosphere and stores it in the water, or the H2O particles. I'm not going to go into that. But the water around Europe is heating up faster than anywhere else on the planet. In fact, temperatures have spiked by 10% in the last 25 years. With oceans warming leads to species not being able to adapt fast enough. And what I mean by that is that coral reefs are dying. What happens here is that the ocean takes up temperature very, very easily, increasing surrounding water temperature. It's a natural process, but the amount it's taking up is not natural. It is also a natural carbon sink. What happens here is that the excess CO2 in the atmosphere gets taken up by the ocean or its inhabitants in the water, increasing acidification or changing pH levels, meaning that animals that rely on calcium carbonated skeletons to survive will not survive. They'll most likely die out, meaning that there will be a huge shift in ecological food webs, that there's going to be cascading effect through every single food web or food chain, trophic food web in the environment. Everything is melting. In fact, Alaska reached an all-time high of 32.5 degrees Celsius, breaking previous records. Greenland temperatures also soared, or shattered would be a better word, previous records in temperatures, melting nearly 200 billion tons of ice in July alone. The Arctic is melting slightly slower than previous years. However, the surrounding water is heating up faster than previous years, meaning that summer is lasting longer in the area. What I mean by that is the surrounding water is heating up a lot faster than the ice can sustain. The under ice begins to melt faster than the top ice can recover. Ultimately, melting. Permafrost is collapsing and melting a lot more rapidly than previous research has stated. What happens is that usually permafrost will melt gradually. It'll happen over time and release greenhouse gas emissions trapped in the soil from microbial interactions. What happens here is that the permafrost is melting too quickly and releasing huge amounts of CO2 at once in the atmosphere that already has a ridiculous amount of pollution already stored in it. However, the one thing I need to state here is that there are huge gaps in the research as of now, and there still needs to be more relevant statistical studies to determine how much greenhouse gas is released and if that is a huge issue on the environment, which I assume it would be. But estimates are stating that 50% of the greenhouse gases stored in the permafrost is being released more rapidly than previous hypotheses. And last but most certainly not least, emissions are rising, or emissions are accelerating, would be a better word. Greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere reached 414.8 part per million, or ppm, in May this year. Last year, it was roughly 407.5 ppm. Scientists or researchers have stated that statistically, the annual concentrations of greenhouse gases typically went up by 1.5 ppm. A couple years ago, it increased to 2.2 ppm, and as of now, it's almost 3.2 ppm annually. The problem here is that if concentrations reach 450 ppm, we're going to have a major issue. In fact, we're going to have increased extreme weather events and increased overall average global temperatures on every continent. What this means is that areas will dry up faster, oceans will warm up faster, and summers will last longer and be more extreme. It's not something we want. We are a species that makes up 0.01% of all biomass on this planet. We've wiped out nearly 83% of most mammals, half of all plant species, transformed entire ecosystems, shifted the chemical concentrations in the atmosphere, and warmed the oceans to the point where they are becoming too acidic for most organisms to survive in. I haven't scratched the surface of what we've done to the planet and what we are continuing to do to the planet, but it's an issue that needs to be looked at and needs to be resolved before it gets any worse than it already has. We've been warned multiple times by scientists, and we didn't do anything. So it's never become more apparent that we are in trying times and it needs to be fixed. Anyway, don't want to end on a depressing note. I hope you guys liked that video. If you did, make sure you like, comment and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you educate, don't eradicate. And I will see you guys next Wednesday for another video